guys, Mike, your host at Craft Beer Storm. How are you doing? Today we have, I was thinking about it, and I'm thinking about all the states, and they just vary in laws and what they're doing in each state, and procedures, processes, and what they're allowed to do, what not to do. So I think I'm just going to go out to craft brewers guilds in each state, and I did make contact with the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, and we have Joseph Cortes, who's the executive director, on. I had a nice conversation with them about what's happening, especially during the COVID and how they handle that. But I'd like to get to that. But first, hey, have you gone on iTunes? Give us a rating and review, or any platform that you're on. I would appreciate it. Click on those 5 stars. Everything will be okay. It's the only way we get our message out to people about craft beer. Now more than ever, craft brewers need your support. They've been hit with this, shutting down tap rooms is horrible. I mean, they've done curbside pickup, and I hear good things coming out of that, but there's nothing that replaces actual people going in and drinking pints in their tap rooms. Hopefully that opens up and it eases up, now. But we'll see what happens. But I had a nice conversation with Joseph, and here we go. And we have Joseph Cortes. He is the executive director of the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild. How are you, Joseph?
Hey, Michael. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No, I appreciate you. I reached out to you, and you responded, and it was timely. Sometimes you reach out and you can't wait, but you were very timely. I appreciate it, but we get people on. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to approach a lot of the states around the United States, see how breweries are doing within each state, because it could vary. State laws are just way off the charts in some states, and they're more reasonable in other states. So maybe we can start off with maybe your background, how you got involved with the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, and then you could take it from there.
Yeah. So thanks for the question. My story may be a bit different than some. I actually did not have a craft beer or beer industry or beverage industry background. My background is mostly in advocacy and policy and leading movements, both on the political side and also the nonprofit and nonpartisan advocacy side. So a lot of experience in a few different states, but here in Georgia for the past several years, I'm down at the state capitol, advocating and lobbying for different causes, particularly some education work that has really been my bread and butter, again, as well as some political work. So, I had a pretty good knowledge of our system here in Georgia, of our legislative kind of system and the way how to navigate that. I most recently worked for the current lieutenant governor of Georgia, and that really just afforded me really in-depth look and experience at the legislative process, really at every step in that process. So lo and behold, which kind of led me to doing some other contract work around just some advocacy projects. And I was pretty happy doing some of that, including some education work after leaving the lieutenant governor's office, after a little bit of work there. And this opportunity actually came up. They were looking for a new executive director, and somebody that I knew, a colleague at the Capitol, actually referred me to one of the brewery owners here who actually sat on the hiring committee. And it's not something I had thought of before. I'll rewind just a little bit more, actually. I'd actually been a recent, more recently partaking in craft beer. I was, one of the prompts that you sent me before was just the idea of, big beer and craft beer. For a long time, I was probably mostly a big beer drinker, just because I didn't really think about it too much. And actually, pretty recently, before I even this opportunity to work with the Craft Brewers Guild in Georgia was even on my radar, I really started getting into more local craft beers and um, buying more craft beers, consuming craft beers out. When I was out with friends, I've got some great friends who are what I would call craft beer enthusiasts, even before me. One of them we spent a weekend up in Asheville for his bachelor party, and I'm sure you're familiar with Asheville and many are. It's kind of a craft brewery hub, and you could
Right.
just spend every minute for an entire weekend going from brewery to brewery. So that's how I originally entered the kind of craft beer enthusiast world was fairly recently before this opportunity came up. So, long story short, I went through the hiring process. I was very interested in this, advocating for this industry. It really appealed to me. We had, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit, but some recent success legislatively, and there was really an opportunity to help steward the guild, the association, and also the industry towards some more success from a policy standpoint. And that's really what my passion is. So that's what kind of lent itself to this opportunity and this job. And then, frankly, the opportunity to jump into a new and exciting and growing industry that I could learn more about. That's something I'm pretty passionate about as well. So that's the journey of kind of how I got plugged into this opportunity and job.
Yeah. It is a great industry, and the people in it are fantastic, hardworking, passionate people. That's why I got into it. I just went to go. I had an idea, then I went to go visit breweries. I had a brewery in New Hampshire, which we may resurrect. I was talking to the landlord, so stay tuned. This COVID stuff is just,
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's an excellent industry. So how do you find Georgia? I mean, you deal with the states, the legislators. I mean, do you find them as very approachable, and are they willing to work with you guys? And some states are off the charts, like we talked about before, and some of them are very helpful, and they want to change the laws that are antiquated. What do you say about Georgia?
Yeah, so Georgia's tough. I will say that we were fighting an uphill battle. So prior to 2017, we did not have direct taproom sales at our breweries.
Wow.
We had this antiquated kind of backward system of purchasing a ticket for a tour that came with samples, and that was kind of the entryway into breweries being able to sell their product. It was limited, obviously. With your ticket, you only got a certain amount of samples and bills, and there was all of these different rules around that. And breweries could not sell, pints and full, fully to consumers in their tap rooms. So for a while, they couldn't even sell to-go packages in their breweries. So that's what came first. Actually, the ability to sell to-go, and then in 2017, Senate Bill 85, the Georgia Craft Beer law, actually helped modernize and bring Georgia, frankly, up to date with what almost every other state had the ability to do, which was sell directly in tap rooms. So that really revolutionized the industry in Georgia and obviously opened it up to a whole lot of growth and expansion and investment, frankly. So you saw this expansion from 2017 until now of a few dozen more breweries. So the 2019 data shows Georgia has 111 breweries. I think before 2017 there was probably around 30.
Wow.
So you can see just the kind of explosion, and it just took that one policy that helped give our small businesses, our independent local brewers, more freedom to thrive in this environment. They were really being held back, and Georgia beer is really, I think, up and coming, but we really just needed and need probably more favorable policies. So back to kind of the point of your question, how are Georgia policymakers? We've got a lot of great folks who want to help local independent craft breweries and thrive. They're a really important part of their local economy, of the local kind of atmosphere of their cities and towns. But we do have an, I would say, long-standing entrenched lobby with one segment of the three-tiered system. The wholesalers that do have a lot of influence with some of the leadership in the Georgia Capitol, and they've been at it a long time. Politics is a relationship business, and they've been building and laying the groundwork for a long time, and the system has, we believe, benefited them for a long time. And I understand if I worked for their side, I'd probably be working to protect what we have too. But that doesn't mean that the restrictions that our independent craft breweries face and deal with every day is what's really best for business and for their local economies. So we're going to continue to build our case down at the Capitol and in every district across Georgia, especially with those local craft brewers, getting in front of their elected officials and policymakers and continuing to tell the story of Georgia beer and how some more favorable laws and policies would help this business continue to thrive, because we're still behind. So, for example, I believe we were 2019 data had us at 48th ranking for breweries per capita. Okay. So that shows that we're really ripe for an even bigger explosion of investment, our whole COVID-19 crisis notwithstanding. Well, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that, but we're really just, it's an exciting time to be in the craft beer industry in Georgia. We need a little more freedom from a policy perspective, and we're working on it.
Wow. We have 48. Wow. I didn't realize it was that. It's like 2 other states, I guess, that are.
Yeah, that's right.
But I agree with you. You're probably, you can probably surge there, in terms of selling beer. And unfortunately, I know I've dealt with distributors. I know the stories and I know the games that are played with, especially with, and you got a beer. That's good. I should have poured myself
That's
a beer.
Right.
I got water. After this podcast, I'm going to get a beer. I want to be coherent. So I have a beer afterwards, but, kegs, tap lines in bars and restaurants, all that stuff is just blatant stuff, which is not really kind of swept under the rug. But they have this massive, lobby, and the laws are kept antiquated, and it doesn't help brewers, smaller brewers either, So, and now we have just the taproom model, which is great. But now you mentioned the COVID, right? If everybody's on a taproom model, you're relying on people to come in, they shut you down. What's that going to do for your business? Your business can't really survive long term like that. And they did some surveys, and I've been talking about it, is like 46% of the breweries in the U.S. are like, we're not going to make it if we keep going like this. We're just not going to make it. And it's a horrible thing.
And that survey you referenced, from the Brewers Association, was earlier on when we did have the shutdown and lockdown orders in most states. The third survey they did painted a slightly rosier picture. So most breweries actually, a lot more than I think was expected, survived beyond that 3 months. But there's a few factors there, obviously. So states started to reopen. So, for example, Georgia was one of the first to reopen, and we had a phased reopening, and we had I'll give credit to our breweries. They did a really great job at being responsible and following every available guideline and best practice and procedure to keep their staff and their buildings, and most importantly, their consumers and their customers safe. So that helped. And then also, obviously, some of the government relief, I'm sure, helped keep people alive for a few more months. But yeah, it's obviously a very delicate situation as we all continue to navigate exactly what direction this thing is going to go and how that's going to affect our ability to stay open and to stay safe, which are both very important things to me as advocating for our breweries and our customers. So there's reason for hope, but there's a much bigger, obviously, public health and public policy question that has to be solved over the next several months for certainly the craft beer industry, but all of industry to survive and keep chugging here.
Yeah, it's just trying times with the COVID, but you said breweries are trying to make the best of it, and they did comply with all the regulations and shutdowns, and it's good that you guys are reopening. I know Florida, there's a big surge. They talk about surge and people getting COVID, and so my brother's down there and they're panicking about the surge, and my parents are down there, and then now all of a sudden I hear it's leveling off. Like it's like within a week, like it surges and then levels off. So I don't know what's going on, but that's not good for businesses either. Like if they shut down businesses again, I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But I did. I had Mitch Steele on the podcast from New Realm. Because he was up in New Hampshire actually, and he has a good, I guess, a place in his heart for New Hampshire. He used to work for Budweiser up there in the Merrimack Valley, but it is a bigger beer, but their quality control is like second to none. Like,
sure.
So he learned a lot, and then he went out to Stone and made a name for himself out in Stone. Now he's at New Realm. And then they bought the old facility that was supposed to be Green Flash, and then that they kind of just said we're not going to open it, but it's a beautiful thing, and it's in Virginia. But they're doing well. They're doing good as well. So what? Even a lot of the events like the Craft Brewers Conference, and now the GABF Craft Brewers Conference was just canceled. They did it online, but I was planning to go.
Yeah.
And then the GABF, usually I go every year, and now they're doing that online too. And I think they're to have people shipping the beer, and they're still going to do the the thing. But how has the guild I guess responded to that? I mean, have you had virtual meetings and with brewers and
Yeah, we have had virtual meetings, so just to give you a little bit of perspective, I started on March 1st in this role, which really was about 2 weeks before things got really serious in the United States as far as, the reality set in about COVID-19 and its effect on us. And then obviously a couple weeks after that was when we started in Georgia, entering into, mandated closures, shutdowns, stay-at-home orders, beginning of April. So that's kind of where I came from in terms of having to pivot very quickly and be very creative, as a lot of our brewers were. I think that's part of what's great about this industry is just the ingenuity and
pivoting.
Resourcefulness. We had to do the same thing as a guild, and I had to do the same thing as a professional running the guild. Figure out, okay, first we were a little bit in triage mode, trying to help sift through and navigate some of the government relief that was available to our craft breweries and brewers. So there was a lot of that. We offered some virtual webinars and workshops on navigating that process and tried to get things in front of them as quickly as possible. We had our quarterly meeting in April was actually completely virtual. Normally it would be in person at a hosted brewery somewhere in Georgia. And then we've had some other opportunities, to get some industry experts to do some presentations for our brewers in a virtual sense. And then now, we're looking at how we can pivot, especially going into the fall, assuming we don't have a vaccine widely distributed and we haven't solved the COVID-19 issue by then. And we're still in at least as far as big events go, a mostly virtual posture. What are the opportunities we can do for the public to get in front of the public, and maybe some other states have done some virtual beer fests. I think they were more successful earlier. So obviously when people were actually quarantining, staying at home, were probably more prone to sit in front of their computer for a couple hours and drink beer and watch some programming. It's a little less likely now that the weather is nice. We're at least open to a certain degree. You can go to our breweries and again, partake in some fashion. It's just, doesn't lend itself to at least the public facing virtual events. But yeah, we're looking to see, How do we pivot? Because that also represents a big hit to organizations like ours and certainly the Brewers Association to our revenue. We had been a part of one of the larger craft beer festivals in the Atlanta area, and we were a large portion of that was donated to us, and that's obviously not happened this year. So we're really having to be creative about what we do the rest of the year, and then hopefully getting back into some in-person events next year.
Yeah, I guess you just got to pivot. When you're saying about pivoting and being flexible, I think that's the great thing about a smaller brewery. You can kind of, if you have a massive brewery and you're producing, crazy amounts of beer, like maybe do a stout. All of a sudden, stouts are crazy popular, so you have to gear everything up towards that. Like smaller breweries can pivot. All right, I'll make a stout this week. All right, I don't want to make it. I think IPAs are selling better. Okay, so we'll make IPAs. The same thing. Like, all right, I can't sell in house, but I can sell curbside, right? I think, did you have a lot of curbside pickup? Did that help, I guess, overall?
Yeah, so we did have curbside. That is one thing in Georgia that we had, and we were able to take advantage of. We didn't get any special concessions. We asked for the ability to, at least during the crisis, deliver. That wasn't granted. We don't have delivery in Georgia, at least not for craft breweries. They just passed a bill, but it only applies to retailers, or what's defined as retailers. So restaurants, they included package stores at the last minute, other retailers like that. So we didn't have that ability. We asked for it to help our brewers weather the storm. We didn't get it. We asked for there's still a cap on what can be purchased to go. So it's 288 ounces, which, depending on the packaging, is not a huge amount that folks can go and buy and take out in a day. So, there's still some barriers to us being able to do well in good times and weather storms like this better. But curbside certainly helped to go. Our breweries did some really great. Some of them did great drive-through options and really pivoted to have their staff just running very efficient drive-throughs and curbside operations. It was really impressive to see that play out here.
I guess y'all got to figure it out, if y'all want to stay in business, you have to figure out, like, everybody's got to pitch in, and
everybody's got to pitch in. We figured out as best as we could, given the circumstances, but, one or two other lifelines from our public policy makers and elected officials sure would help. And we're going to be working on that.
Yeah, this restriction, why is it restricted? I don't know. You can go into a store and you can buy like the whole shelf, and they don't, I think, right? Unless it's toilet paper, then you can't buy the whole shelf, right? That was the whole thing they gave you.
I think it just has to, again, goes to the inequity in the system.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's just ridiculous, right? This is where you get back to these antiquated laws that don't make sense, and you have to question them and say, well, who does this really protect here? Okay. And you just have to get down to it, and the lobbies are in, and I'm sure, but that's the world we live in. The lobbies are all over the place, and they protect interests, and it's unfortunate, but I'm glad that you're doing something about it. And, you got to, you guys step up and you say, hey, this is not right, and you take the steps to do what you got to do. So what do you say? I mean, now, the whole COVID thing came, and, before that, everybody was talking about a bubble, like a craft beer bubble, right? Now, that could have been popped somewhat, I guess, because maybe some breweries that you're not really optimizing or not really generating, a profit, all of a sudden, bang, they couldn't pivot and maybe use cans or do packaging because they didn't have it, and maybe they went under. I don't know if this whole COVID thing cleaned those types of breweries out. Or do you think there's still a bubble? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I, in terms of pinpointing bubbles, I would rely on folks with economics degrees that are probably smarter than me. But I think so beer sales, even before COVID, over the past few years nationally, we're in a slight downward trend. But that, I think, from what I've seen, can mostly be attributed to competition. You see now the growth of seltzers and the wine industry and liquor. So there's a lot of competition in the market, which, from what I can tell, was part of the slight downturn, but that didn't necessarily apply to Georgia. I mean, I think we were in a growth phase for craft beer here. So I don't know about the bubble. I had asked about this before. I was obviously it's my job to be a craft beer enthusiast now, but even before that, when I was much more casual about my beer drinking, and when I lived in Indiana, I actually had some friends who were wanting to open a brewery, and this was about 10 years ago. Actually, yeah, about nine or so years ago. And they were in a growth phase there in Indiana at the time. And I asked the same question. I said, well, where's the bubble? Because they were trying to get investors, and they wanted my help to get investors. I don't know a darn thing about how to get investors, but
yeah.
If I had $1 million to invest in a craft brewery, that was one of the questions I would have asked was where's the bubble? And I don't know the answer to that. I think, in Georgia, we're certainly poised for more growth. So,
yeah. I mean, if you're number 58, I mean, or 48, I think you are. I mean, I would think you would be up more, but the population of Georgia is not. I think you have a lot. Yeah, you have a lot more people, right?
Bigger,
are they? Why do you think a lot more people aren't drinking beer? Or I don't know. What do you think? Do they like wine instead, or?
That I think it really goes back to our restrictive laws,
yeah,
and policies.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, Mississippi just leapfrogged us in another policy, and they're a much smaller state. Alabama is ahead in some ways. So we have neighboring states that some are smaller, some are, obviously Florida is a big state, very big state. They're ahead of us. Tennessee has much more favorable policies. South Carolina, North Carolina. I mean, we're surrounded by, which should actually help us make the case. We just have to keep at it and continue to make it.
I think that's what you got to do, and it's going to take some time. I was in New Hampshire, and they had really antiquated laws, and like you said, they changed the. You can do like a nano brewery, like what I opened. So you can have. People can open. They could do like 5 gallons of beer or something, or 10 gallons, or 1 barrel or whatever, and then they could open. They could be a brewery, and when they did that, then it was like 20 breweries when I started. They just changed it, and then 5 years later, there's like 100. So it's like it quintupled, in 5 years. So the amount of breweries that opened was just a big amount. But I think if you can compare yourself to other states, I would figure Georgia would have been more ahead. It's interesting, but it's unfortunate. Yeah.
We're headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
There's some other areas where we are, have a higher ranking when you look at the industry, but there's still some things, if we can remove those barriers, I think we'll really see our craft breweries do even better.
Well, these state lawmakers, you sell more beer, you can tax more product, all right? That's revenue for the state. It's only just going to help the state. So
that's right.
You got to figure out, okay, that makes sense. There's something else blocking it, right? What is that? It begins with an L, lobbies, right? It's ridiculous. It's like stupid. So, I guess you keep plugging ahead and keep, water, if it goes down a cliff, if all of a sudden it forms a channel if it keeps going, right? So you're just going to keep pounding at it, and I believe you guys will get there. And yeah, I want to come down there too. I know people down there. That's why I wanted to talk to you.
Oh, there's some great beer, some great breweries.
Oh, yeah.
I'm enjoying learning more about the craft beer, brewing process and industry. I've learned a lot over the past few months. I think there's a lot of great things to explore. And my main, at the end of the day, my goal is, I think our craft breweries and our cities and towns across Georgia are part of what make them great places to live, work, and visit. And we want more of all of those things for next to our craft breweries. So
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate you being on. If somebody wants to get a hold of you or learn more about Georgia and the Georgia Craft Beer Guild, Brewers Guild, sorry, how can they get a hold of you guys?
So our website, which actually we just moved over to a new website, so it's a work in progress, but it's a long website, but it's Georgia spelled out. So GeorgiaCraftBrewersGuild.org.
Okay, .org. Okay.
Yep. And they can reach me there and reach us, and look forward to hearing from folks, and come visit Georgia.
Yeah, awesome. So I appreciate you being on, Joseph, and thank you for all your work you're doing. You're helping the brewers, and they need you guys to help them and defend them during these times too, like this COVID times, and you don't know what else is going to come down the pike. Who knows? But I think the laws are changing, and the brewers appreciate your assistance. So that's great. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Awesome. Thank you. That was Joseph Cortes, the executive director of Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, and a lot of good stuff happening in Georgia. He's in the state capitol lobbying. You got to combat these other lobbyists for distributors and so forth. There's a lot of crazy, antiquated laws out there, and I think slowly Georgia's getting these laws reversed. There's states around them, like Joseph was saying, that are getting these things done, and he's using them as examples. And I guess the legislatures are like, all right, we got to loosen up a bit. And even the breweries, they passed that bill in 2017 where you can sell beer in tap rooms. Before of it, you can only do like tours and get like a sample. So it went from 30 to 111 breweries, right, in a couple of years. So it's just exploded. And good stuff in Georgia. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please, if you like this podcast, share it with a friend. Give us a rating and review. Subscribe. That just helps me and helps the whole podcast and the craft beer world get more recognition. These guys work hard, and if you can support them, they're a local business, and they would appreciate it. They have kids, families, hardworking people, great people. All right, that's what I got for you today, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.